Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now in the previous video we tested Nvidia's GTX 1650 Super, an old budget graphics card. Back in 2019 this thing was a sub £200 or dollar king. In yesterday's video there was of course one title missing, and that was Battlefield 6, which released after I finished testing. So today I thought we'd see how the game runs on this 4GB GPU. Now you catch me in the middle of turning all the settings to their respective lowest. We're gonna stick with 100% resolution scale for now. As you can see, we're basically, well, almost exceeding the video memory according to the little VRAM notification thing at the bottom right of the screen. I've also turned off a few personal settings, and importantly, I should note I've uninstalled the HD or high-res textures. These can be done from within Steam or from within the game, and then you have to restart the game. We need all the help we can get in order to squeeze the most from this 4GB card. Can it handle Battlefield 6? Well, let's find out. So I started off with 1080p native, and let me tell you, most of the time was spent on the floor, at least in this initial gameplay session here. I am sorry boys, I've just spawned into the game and immediately I've been wiped out in traditional fashion. Now I am surprised to see between 50 and 60 frames per second at 1080p native. The card is basically being fully utilised. We're looking at 97 to 100% utilisation. The i5-12400F I've paired it with actually makes for a pretty decent pairing. I think you're not going to be pairing a 1650 Super with anything too powerful. Thank you for the revival. Oh, and I'm down again. Managed to wipe out one enemy there, but it was rather short-lived. So the 1650 Super here has one 6-pin connector. I'm using an ASUS model, consuming just over 90 watts of power. Oh, revived again. Let's go. Right, so performance is okay. The game doesn't look its best, of course, at these settings. We're running at about 50 to 60 frames per second here. I'm not going to put any benchmark figures up until we've settled on settings that actually give us at least 60 FPS, because although you're seeing between 50 and 60 here, there will be instances where we drop below 50, and it can feel a little jarring at times. Can we wipe this guy out? Yes, another one down. So let's play about with the settings a little more until we can achieve a more consistent, struggling to get my words out today, a more constant or consistent 60 FPS. So we were using TAA at native res, but I decided to enable FSR performance mode first of all to see if this would help give us a more consistent 60 FPS plus average. I don't know if you caught it there, but we're now utilising more VRAM than the card actually has, or the game wants to use more VRAM than is available. It says that these settings are using over 4 gigs of memory. We only have 4 gigs, of course. Yeah, we're seeing very similar performance to what we were seeing before. Upscaling doesn't really help here. That goes for FSR or XeSS. You may see 60 at times, but it doesn't last, to be honest, and it can, like I said, feel a little jarring in places. And performance is going to differ slightly depending on the map too. Just to show you what I mean, I then turn things all the way down to ultra performance with FSR here. Again, it's a very similar sort of frame rate, not too smooth at all. When we wander indoors, the frame rate's going to shoot up above 60, sometimes 70 frames per second. There will be a few spikes as well in the frame time graph because of the VRAM limit that we are up against here. If we move on to XeSS with the same ultra performance setting, again, it's going to be a similar story. In fact, this probably performs a little worse. Now upscaling actually seems quite intensive for this card. Although it's supposed to improve our frame rates, the actual upscaling itself is quite hard on the 1650 Super. It seems to affect performance negatively in some cases here. I therefore decided to just mess around with the fixed resolution scale and turn AA off completely. So I started with 50% resolution, so we're just running the game at 50% of 1080p, no upscaling here. TAA was off, in fact all anti-aliasing was off. It did say that this option was unsupported. I don't really know what that means, because it's clear that there is no anti-aliasing here. The game looks pretty horrible, but with TAA on it was more of a blurry mess. I think it looks better with 50% scaling and then TAA off as opposed to on. I'd rather have the jagged lines everywhere than a screen that looks like Vaseline has been smeared all over it. We also have FSR and XeSS native anti-aliasing which we can use, and if we have the resolution scale set to like 50% like we do here, we're still going to see that same modified resolution even with one of those anti-aliasing options enabled, but these are both going to take their toll on the frame rate. So I'd actually suggest keeping any and all upscaling off and just turning the resolution scale slider down if you're using a card like this. Can we wipe out this guy? Come on. Man down. Sorry, boys. Now, if you are feeling particularly daring or brave, you can actually push the fixed resolution scale up to 60% with the 1650 Super. According to the video memory in the bottom right corner, we will still be utilising more than 4 gigs, more than our card actually has. It says the video memory threshold exceeded. We can set it to 60% again. We have to leave AA off for best results, but 60% of 1080p actually looks noticeably better than 50% of 1080p, and we're still seeing plus 60 frames per second, which is ideal for an online competitive shooter such as this. As you can see from this footage, I'm not the best Battlefield player in the world, but this frame rate did mean that I was able to wipe out a few enemies. The gameplay felt relatively smooth. There weren't really any hiccups or dips and drops with the performance here. Different maps again will mean varied performance, but from what I saw, we'll move on to another map in a minute, we still saw at least 60 FPS a lot of the time. Not all of the time, but from my findings, this was the best way to play. I thought that guy was alive, but he was just floating in the middle of the air for some reason. I've seen that a couple of times. I've also seen a couple of enemies get wiped out and then they go blasting across the map, like their lifeless corpse just goes shooting across the map. Not sure. I think they were just shot with like normal bullets by other players, so don't know what's happening there, but it was a pretty funny observation. Alright, I've seen a few enemies hiding out in that bandstand or gazebo over there. Right, first one down. I've actually switched on streamer mode, which is why all the names are like generic. I just do this in games that support it, of course, for the sake of privacy or whatever. But yeah, that's why all the names just look generic and sort of botty. But, oh, another guy. Let's wipe him out. Another one as well. No, he's made an escape. Right, I saw a guy around the other side. Where have you gone? Yes, there we go. See, I'm not playing too bad, actually. I'm not too terrible at Battlefield. Battlefield, Call of Duty, I'm fine at. But when it comes to CS2, you've seen my gameplay. It's just, I'm awful. My reaction times, I think, aren't quite good enough for the veterans of Counter-Strike. We will switch maps now with the 1650 Super still in the system, of course, and maintaining 60% resolution scale with anti-aliasing off. Can't remember what this map is called, but it actually runs slightly worse than previous. The average and percentile low should be up on screen now, because this is really the only way I'd recommend playing Battlefield 6 if you have a 1650 Super. I don't think it's worth messing around with the upscaling options. Double kill there, lovely. I think you're best off just setting a lower native res scale, turning AA off completely. Sure, the game doesn't look that great, but if you've bought this, you have a cheaper card like the 1650 Super and you want plus 60 FPS, basically a decent time with this title, then you can do so if you're willing to make this sort of visual sacrifice. I mentioned before that it's not a constant plus 60 FPS, there will be dips and drops below this. Like when there's smoke effects on screen, a lot of explosions, you may see dips to the mid-40s, but for the most part, yeah, it's definitely doable, definitely playable on this aging 4 gig GPU. Not many new games would probably run this well on a 4 gig 1650 Super, as you may have seen in yesterday's video, but there we are. Hopefully this helps you out if you're looking to play on a cheaper or older card. I'll be testing a few cards and configurations with Battlefield 6 because I've been looking forward to this one, to be honest, and hopefully you can join me then too. So thank you for watching. Let me know how the game runs for you on your specs down below, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.